and welcome back to the Pillar Podcast, where we sit down with leaders in their field of research and high performance, as well as the teams and the founders of the companies that exist within our field of sports and fitness. At Pillar, we are on a mission to get athletes to the start line in their best condition. We do that here at Pillar by developing clinical and micronutrition supplements across sleep, recovery, inflammation, immunity, and energy. We have a great chat this week for you. Our head of research, Dr. Dan Plews, sits down with three-time HYROX world champion Hunter McIntyre. This is a chat I've been looking forward to for a long time, and I hope you guys very much enjoy it. Hunter details his journey into HYROX, coming from a background actually in running and wrestling, then later into obstacle course racing, and then, as we know him today, as the HYROX world champion. Dan and Hunter get into the nuts and bolts of this discussion, specifically talking about training zones that are now required to be programmed and trained and learned to compete at HYROX at the highest level. Hunter details his training into low-intensity exercises and volumes versus high-intensity sessions, his power to strength sessions, efficiency, and also some of the core skill and competency trainings he's done to specifically prepare for a HYROX race course. Obviously, they will be talking about nutrition as well, which Hunter now is notorious for on the HYROX circuit. And very interestingly, I think a lot of people will like Hunter's takeaway. He gives some very specific insights for those endurance athletes that may be coming from a marathon or a cycling or even an Ironman background, and the mistakes that he is seeing a lot of these athletes make as they are transitioning into HYROX. So make sure you listen out for that. He has a couple of gems in there. Enjoy the chat. It's certainly a good one.
Hunter, welcome to the Pillar Performance Podcast. It's a pleasure to have you here. I've been doing a bit of a deep dive into the world of HYROX and changing skills in terms of sport, and you came right up there in some of my research, and I think, God, I need to speak to this guy. He seems like a total weapon. So no, thanks for coming on.
I appreciate you having me on, dude. It's always fun to chat the shit.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess, I really wanted to start off. I mean, I think many of our audience might know a bit about you, but I'd really like to start off by, winding the clock back a little bit and kind of bring everyone up to speed with, your history as an athlete. What brought you into originally? It was obstacle and Spartan type of racing, and ultimately to where we are today, where the HYROX world champion, HYROX world record holder, and what started you on this journey? What's your background as an athlete? Where did it all begin?
Dude, I was a high school runner and high school wrestler, but I was not great. I was never excellent. 16-minute 5Ks in high school. I think 16:38 was my best, which is not that crazy. It's on cross country with a little bit of rolling hills and stuff, but it was never special. I was never a state champion and everything. I was never even really a regional champion of anything. But back then it was just like you're a kid. There were some kids that were really into sports, but I wasn't that guy. I smoked a lot of pot.
What age is that then? What age is that for the viewers?
I didn't start running until I was a junior in high school.
Yeah, okay.
So the age of that is maybe 16.
16, yeah, okay.
And, I ran from the age of 16 to 17, 17 to 18. And, in reality, I was probably clocking like 10 to 15 miles a week, very nonspecific.
Yeah.
And there's sometimes we do workouts that are that long now. So it's like, it's a totally different world.
Yeah.
And
you normalize things in your mind, right? The longer you go, things get a bit crazy sometimes. The more you train.
Yeah.
Normalizing silly distances.
I talk about it very often. I look forward to just like showing up and doing a workout that has no data attached to it.
Yeah.
I would love to just go running for the sake of running, but that doesn't exist anymore. But back then it did. So like back then in high school, like I didn't care. And when everyone went on to college, I went to rehab for a year. So all these kids that I was running with became athletes, and I got in a lot of trouble. That's not the point of the conversation, but I got even more detracted from the potential of being a very high level athlete. I didn't really approach athletics with seriousness until I was 21, 22. And I just recognized, I was like, I'm never going to become great trying to hang out with a bunch of college kids, splitting their time up between partying, training, and schoolwork. I like partying and training more. And it took me a while to get rid of the partying and just focus on the training. So, it took me years to even get to the point where it mattered enough to put all my focus on it. And then once I did that, it was just a vertical line of success.
Yeah. And where did that success come? Where did it come? What did you? What sports did you find originally that really suited you? Because obviously, the wrestling background, there's a high degree that you have of strength, right? And just looking at some of the things that you can do, you're obviously a very physically strong individual as well, and I think that's where you shine, right? You have this ability to run fast, very fast, but also very strong as well, which doesn't happen, right? It's very hard to mix those two things together.
I never have ever been the fastest and strongest person, but I've always had this odd strength. So when I was younger, I would climb trees a lot with just my bare hands, and I would climb up vines and trees so I always had this very, very really good upper body strength and core strength. I can't bench. My record for bench is 3 plates, and my record for squat is 4 plates. My record for deadlift is almost 6 plates.
So what's that in kilos? Is that what
I think it's 145 kilos bench, and it's 180 kilos squats, and it's 250, 265 or something like that deadlift. Yeah. They're all strong numbers, but if you look at people, if you think about it, I'm just saying, if you look at somebody who's going to run a marathon versus me, there's guys who run a 2-hour marathon. If you put a gun to my head right now, I might run a 2:35.
Yeah.
If you put a bar on the ground, I'll put 5-6 plates on it and I'll lift it off the ground. But the guy who's the best in the world in the same weight class as me may be able to put on 10 plates.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's I've never been astoundingly strong in everything, but when you put the two of them together, I just was the person that could just keep on showing back up all the time and never get tired. My career kind of always bounced around because we never made much money doing very obstacle course racing. So a big part of my career was actually jumping into television shows and competing on random shows and these feats of strength and physicality for reality television.
So what shows have you been on?
A bunch of them, dude. Spartan Ultimate Team Challenge. That was this team Spartan race obstacle course, strongman kind of test. There was a show called Broken Skull Ranch, which was considered the toughest show on television, and I was the champion of that for 3 years straight. $1 Million Mile. I had my own television show where I toured around the world doing all the hardest endurance races in the world called Boundless. So I was doing cross-country ski races, 100-mile races in the desert, multi-day stage races, adventure races, biking races across Chamonix. It was crazy. And
wow.
I was just kind of doing all these random things, and I kept on accumulating skills as I went on. And, it's interesting how I found this sport, HYROX, at the age of 30 years old. And they're like, how are you so good at this? And I was like, well, you got to figure I spent the last 10 years of my life doing almost 20 different sports. Yeah. And 8 of these of those 20 sports, 8 of these stations are very aligned with it in HYROX.
Yeah.
People were like, how are you so, strong? And I was like, well, I did sled work for Broken Skull Ranch because I used to have to drag people around these strongman contests. I did sled work for 4 or 5 years very intensely before anybody else was really into it.
Yeah.
And, you look at ski erg and rowing. I was always doing ski erg and rowing because I was heavily into CrossFit. And I, wall balls and burpees and lunges, I was heavily into CrossFit also. But then also I had a kind of a coexisting career in running professionally for Spartan Race. So while I was doing all this really, really heavy CrossFit work, I was still pushing 15-minute 5K pace, every single year while doing a very high level of CrossFit. By the time it took 10 years of blending this thing, all of a sudden these people came up and contacted me from HYROX. They're like, you should come do our event. And that's where we're at now.
So, I have a few questions. I want to get into that 5K time. Definitely. You said you talked about CrossFit. You're obviously not as good at, you weren't as good at CrossFit as you are at HYROX. Would that be correct?
Yeah, for sure. I was not the champion of CrossFit by any means.
Why do you think that is? Is that just your size? Because you're quite tall, right? You're 6'2". Is that right?
Yeah, but also my dedication to it was very, very slim in comparison to this.
Right. Okay.
this will sound like I don't like CrossFit, but I actually do love CrossFit. I think CrossFit for the average person and athletes in general is excellent. I think CrossFit as a sport is awful.
Yeah,
I think it's one of the most like damaging, like just rapid existences in the entire world. Like just sitting in a gym all day long, just lifting plates over your head over and over and over again, and then doing muscle ups and doing walking on your hands. And if that's the existence you want, like so be it. You can do that, but it's awful. Like the majority of CrossFit, high level CrossFit athletes that I know have all had injuries, major ones.
I mean, to me, like the difference between, I mean, that's why HYROX interests me a lot more. Like, obviously, I come from like an Ironman background, Ironman triathlon background, and it seems like it's much more endurance, like cardiorespiratory focus. There's a bigger cardiorespiratory focus than CrossFit, and less repetitive reps focus, like CrossFit. And it also seems like there's a lot of rules of CrossFit as well, whereas at least you can be sure that you're going to get the same thing every time, and it's more. Surely you must find in your mindset that's an easier thing to train for, because you know exactly what you're doing and you know exactly what you're going to get.
Well, I also just want to know who's the best. It's kind of like this. I mean, Matt Frazier and Rich Froning were the best for a really long time, but it just seems to switch around all the time. And I'm just the kind of person where I do like the idea of going into the gym, knowing that if I deadlift this, I'm better than I was before, and knowing if I run this, that I was better than I was before. And that's why I think CrossFit will never be as globalized and successful as HYROX is, because very much like if I ask you, I'm like, you say you're a runner. I'm like, cool. I'm like, have you ever done a marathon? You're like, yes. And I'm like, what's your time? So it's like a 1, 2, 3. And it just immediately just allows my brain to calculate what kind of runner you are. What's your capacity? Like, where do you stack up? HYROX, like, oh, have you ever done a HYROX? You're like, yeah. I'm like, where'd you do it? London. What was your time?
Yeah, okay.
And it's just like,
are all those HYROX courses faster? There's some faster than others, because I watched the one. I watched the one in London when you won the World Championships, and it seemed like they were talking about that being a slower course, which surprised me because I thought it would just be quite generic, generic and just like the same.
I mean, you got to understand, like the rooms that they build these things in are never the same, and they jigsaw it and they put it together to fit the room. It's not the same build everywhere you go. You also got to understand some of these venues are so much bigger with so many more athletes. Like if you're racing in the United States, like I'm going to race this weekend, there'll be 3,000 people here. You race in the UK, there'll be 13 to 15,000 people there. They have so much more equipment. They don't factor that in. So if you enter a zone and they have in here 20 ski ergs and rowers, and there they have like 60 ski ergs and rowers, it's that all that extra travel time. It's like people, it's not like I'm going to, in a position where it really even matters, because at this point I've been doing this for 5 years and I don't really care about courses. I just care about beating people. That's really my thing. But if you really want to come down to the nitty gritty, like you and I both know that Berlin is a way easier course to run a marathon than it is Boston. And if the venues are all the same everywhere you go, there's some venues that I just avoid. Like I'll never try to go race a record race in the UK because there's so many athletes competing there that you'll never get a clean course to go run.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's very similar to triathlon, right? You do some triathlons and you can have like thousands of people, and the transitions are huge. When I did California last year, I had 10 minutes worth of transitions because I had to run across. The race was that big. You had to run all the way from the swim all the way across a massive transition.
Yeah.
It all takes time, right? And the more people you get, the longer it is.
It's a factor for sure, and people don't think about it.
Yeah, for sure. So talk to me about your run times then. So like you're 89 kilos, is that right?
Right now I'm probably 88. Yeah.
88 kilos. So you mean you're actually reasonably light for a big muscular guy, but I mean if you compare that to a runner, pretty freaking heavy.
Yeah.
So what times are you kind of putting down for your 5Ks and your 10Ks? Like as a HYROX world champion right now?
I bet you I could probably run like a 15:35 to a 15:45 5K right now.
Yeah, right.
Like all of my workouts right now, like I can go out and I'll break 5-minute miles, just barely. But like a workout for me right now would be 5x5 with 1 minute's rest between, and try to hit like 455s on all of them.
Yeah.
And
Is that outside or on the treadmill?
no, it's outside.
Yeah, outside. Yeah.
Like I
Yeah,
can do
wow.
that. I do most of my training on the treadmill just because it's more exact for me. Like I just want to make
Yeah.
sure that I do the work and it's
Yeah.
always the same and I can show up every time.
Yeah.
But for me, I won't hold on to that fitness for long because I'm really into like my formula of periodization. Like I don't care to run that much in the season. I only care to run just enough to get just in the shape that's necessary.
Yeah.
And then I back off and go do other stuff.
Yeah, but I mean that's incredible. I mean, that's kind of that's a similar sort of time to what I was running at my best when I was doing Ironman, but at 74, 73 kilos and 6'1". I just and I know like for a fact like when I was really competing, I would have to diet so hard because I would naturally want to be at 78, 79, and I would have to really focus on every single thing to get myself down to 73, 74 for Ironman competition. And that was when I was running my best. So, and I know it made the difference. So to run that fast, that is like, it's incredible. It's mind blowing.
Well, just to give you a heads up, like I am 96 kilos in the off season, like 97 right, okay. Even. It's
yeah.
Like,
so I mean, I've obviously done a bit of my research on you leading into this, and I saw you being something you've been focusing on, right? Is trying to like counting your calories, trying to get a bit leaner, a bit lighter. Do you feel that's something that's made a big difference?
I mean, I do it every season. This season, I just took it more seriously because I want to get a faster time. I could just like absolutely like destroy my life, and next season will probably be my last season. And, if I pull off the world title again this year, it will be my 4th world title. And if I get it next year, it'll be 5. And I don't really think I have just like that kind of like smooth number. You're like, I can walk away. But, I will not probably bulk up this season and I'll just stay under 200 pounds. And then it won't be so hard to swing from 215 pounds down to 195 like I just did. Yeah. I think probably like I will get close to being able to get to the 50-minute mark at like 190 to 192 pounds, and right now 195. But the difference of the amount of work I have to do to get off that last 5 pounds is you need more runway, and it's just like it's pretty gross, the efforts you're in. I have an altitude tent in the other room. I weigh all my food out over here. Everything in the gym is super calculated. Like, you know what it's like.
Yeah, I know. And those last little bits are just a nightmare. They're just and it becomes quite unpleasant, right? I mean, it's much nicer to just bulk and not think about it on the other side. That's for sure. Yeah, that's for sure. So do you say you only got one more? Is that a personal choice? Do you think 5 is just a good number for you? That's because I mean, it seems to me. I mean, that like there seems to be a pretty big gap between you and the second place at the moment. From what I've been watching and like in my research before this, it seems like would that be a fair assumption that there's a pretty big gap?
Yeah. I'm just being straight up with you. That's where we're at right now. I've been racing the same guys for a while. I think that there are talents out there that could come in, but by the time they get in and they develop themselves, I'm kind of on my way out. Because it does take a certain amount of time to develop a skill. Like, let's just say I decided to go all in on Ironman. You're taking Hunter, who's a rocket ship in this one version, and now all of a sudden I have to take this rocket ship and I have to lean it out a little bit. I have to change some of the aerodynamics. I have to change the way that it thrusts. And I bet you if I absolutely killed myself, I could be a sub 9-hour Ironman guy. Like if I just decided to go all in. Yeah. And maybe even get even closer, but it would take me, let's just say I took 30 minutes off every single year. Let's say the first year I took off 60 minutes, but now it's 30 minutes and then it's 15 the third year, and now it's down to 5 minutes the fourth year. That would be the same thing if you imagine, let's just say, I've always said if like a really high-end cross-country skier decided to quit and get into HYROX and he was like 85 kilos, we'd be in huge trouble.
Yeah. Do you know who I think would be in trouble with? Have you heard of Ryan Hall?
Yes.
So he looks like someone who would be primed for a bit of HYROX now. You would think. I mean, obviously he's got his running background, but he seems pretty strong as well.
So Ryan and I used to actually work together. We were on a campaign for a company called Second Skin that was owned by Dick's Sporting Goods. And I met Ryan when he was pretty peak bulking, and he was very, very strong. The thing that happens, and you probably understand this, is the muscle fibers that are necessary to be a bodybuilder versus the muscle fibers that are necessary to be an aerobic athlete are so entirely different. And then there's that cross fiber in between. He basically took himself from one end of the spectrum all the way over here. And if you go talk to him now, like his 5K times are in like the 17s.
Yeah.
And let's just say he decided to all of a sudden bring himself back this direction. It'd be awesome. But for some reason, and it's given me like a lot of hope for me staying on top. I've run with some of the best and most diverse endurance athletes in the entire world. And you all of a sudden give them a wall ball and they're fucked. They cannot squat. They cannot throw it. They can't do anything. So there's just something that happens where like the wires just don't hit and the signals are all off. I'm sure you know what the hell is the name of the guy. He won the Ironman World Championships. He was Sebastian.
Yeah, he's been doing HYROX and he's not been that good at it.
Exactly. And I watched his form and everything, and he looks like a goon. And I'm not trying to insult him, but it's just like it's the same way if you gave me a football. Like I'm not going to throw it like Tom Brady. And you'd think I would because I've got the same body type as Tom Brady. I'm muscular like Tom Brady. I'm tall and lean like Tom Brady. But you give me a football and I just don't throw it like Tom Brady.
Yeah. There's got to be, I think there is an aspect of just general coordination, though, when you get so involved in a sport like running, cycling, you know, those very like isolated single movement, you know, you just lose coordination. And I would definitely be in that same category. Like, I'm so uncoordinated when it comes to that sort of stuff, and I really, really struggle with it. But it's I did think about that, but I didn't know that Ryan got that much different in his running because of that. And it's but I think like it is so different. The bodybuilding, everything about it's different, right? The rep range is different. The movement's different. You know, it's slow, it's pausing, it's holding, it's coming back up. You're not necessarily even doing like heavier weights. If you're actually wanting to gain size, you actually don't have to go crazy heavy. You know, you're better doing a bit lighter, doing longer, more stretches. Whereas it's quite different, isn't it?
Yeah. I also just have some things that I've been putting in my wheelhouse for such a long time that have made me uniquely better than other people. And it's like kind of my little secret tidbits and tricks. And, you know, I think that people don't do the things that are necessary. They do the things that they think are cool, or they see like a little piece of paper that somebody else wrote. But to be good at something like this, it's kind of just like a grinding gear. It really is. It really is. It's like, I don't know why, but I was able to go set the Murph world record. I've been able to kind of just move a couple degrees in any direction. And I've been able to stay in that zone of very high level success. But it's something I started 12 years ago that's been giving me success up until now. Like one of them, I don't talk about it like it's a secret, but I don't ride regular bikes. I usually ride a single speed mountain bike.
Oh, interesting.
And just being in that single speed gear and doing a lot of work has given me a level of horsepower that is so steady that for some reason everyone's like, oh, you should stay at 90 RPMs when you're cycling because it's going to stick to your cadence when you're running. For some reason, that doesn't translate well over to HYROX, and
I can believe that. I can believe that. I think that the trick to good cycling is actually you have to be comfortable in all cadences. So, like with a lot of my Ironman guys, we do a lot of work at 60 to 70 RPM. A lot of work in that area.
Then you probably get it.
Builds strong legs, right? So is that like a fixed wheel? Is it a fixed wheel bike, or is it? So it's.
Yeah. So it's not fixie. It's got a free spinning hub in the back.
Okay.
Yeah, it would be too dangerous to do it otherwise. But
yeah. I mean, it's great because I think like this kind of is a really nice segue into your training, because I'm fascinated by, you seem to train like a beast. I read somewhere that you said the reason you're so good at this is because nobody can train like you train, which I think from what I've seen is true. Could you talk me through like a typical training week for you, and like how you, because like, I mean, even juggling 3 sports is crazy, but how you go around juggling your training weeks. I know that you do 2 sessions a week. I mean, I looked at your Strava and I saw last week you ran 88K, which was quite a big run week for you, correct?
Yeah, I won't go much higher than that ever.
So yeah, talk me through how it looks like, the split between like the ergs, the ski ergs, the weights, the running, and talk me through a general week. I'm really love to hear.
I mean, I will tell you that I'm actually typically very low volume on ergs because I think ergs is a level of efficiency and power, and I've already become pretty efficient at it, and I'm already pretty powerful. And it's like if let's just say I probably cover maybe 3,000 to 5,000 meters on each device every single week.
Okay.
It's not very much, but if I decided to bump it up to 10K, would it take off much time from my row and ski? No, just wouldn't.
Yeah. Sure.
My ethos in training is power, weight, and efficiency. It's the three letters that I go by. So if you think about the power thing, let's just say that I can hold, let's just put a random number there. In a sprint, I can hold 2,000 watts for 20 seconds. Let's say all of a sudden, I can hold like 3,500 watts on a ski erg for like 15 seconds. But I'm just like putting random numbers out. 2,000 is an easy number that we can go by. Let's just say all of a sudden now I want to go to 2,500 watts for 20 seconds. The amount of muscle that I would have to put on to generate that extra 25% in watts would now all of a sudden go into the letter W, weight. It would now push the axis so far over from my strength to weight ratio that it would become inefficient. So then you look at, what's that?
I was going to say, do you have a weight that you know is light? Because obviously you've been working to get lighter. Do you think there's going to be, I mean, listen, it's going to be a point of diminishing returns, right? Particularly with things like the ski erg and the rowing. If you get much lighter, it will really wipe away your power, right? Do you have a number base there with that, or is it kind of? Do you know? Do you have any idea?
I've been able to set the world record below 204 pounds every single time that I've raced, and then every single time the further I go away. So when I raced and set the world record in Stockholm, I was actually at 209 pounds. I was either 209. And I ran a 53, but that's just because, as I said, we're going into the letter E. I've become so efficient at this sport that I've been able to allow my strength to weight ratio to tilt over towards too heavy, and I'm still good enough to get away with it.
Yeah, right.
Now, it's exhausting for me. If you watched me in that race, you can see how exhausted I was for putting out that effort. But to run a 2:03:22, which is what I set the world record at right now, I can do that at 7 beats per minute lower than I did when I set the world record.
That's a bit. I mean, that transcends into everything, right? Because if your heart rate's lower, you get onto the next station more fresh. And do you have any idea where you? Sorry, I do want to get back to your training, but this is just another question. Do you have any idea what sort of intensity is a HYROX done at? Is it, if you talk about like aerobic threshold?
It's done zone 4 and zone 5. You can go watch when I won the world title in 2020, and we had to wear heart rate monitors, and it was up on the screen, and my heart rate was 171 to 174 the whole time. And my max heart rate's like 182 to 185.
Oh wow, jeez, painful.
So so you're only like 10 to 15 beats below your max for an hour. I won that in like 60 minutes and 8 seconds. And I was up probably at 170 beats per minute, probably 5 to 7 minutes into the race.
Yeah, wow.
So
are you quite calculated in your training with that? If you had do you like go by training zones, or you said level 4, level 5? Do you actually know where all that sits?
Yeah, I mean, I've worked with this guy Rich Diaz, where he's tested my VO2 max every single year since 2014.
I follow him on Instagram. He's a running guy, right?
Yeah, he's a genius. Yeah. He's really a genius. I mean, I know basically all my work is done at 145, 155, or 165.
Okay.
I would say 80% of my work is done at 70% of my work is done at 145 or less.
Typical kind of polarized model of training, right? Which is very
maybe
similar.
One session floats between 145 and 155 a week, and then there's about 2 to 3 sessions that are 160 to 170 per week. And I think, the 80-20 method is interesting for just the conversation. With this hybrid level of sport, you need to push the intensity a little bit more often, because we're changing energy systems and muscle groups so regularly. If you don't train it and stimulate it often, it's just not sharp.
So what would you say you are? Would you say you're probably more, I mean, there's different, like when you talk training intention distribution, there's polarized model, and there's something called a pyramidal model, which is more like 60 like low intensity, and then kind of 30 or 20 in between, and the rest high. Is that kind of where you probably sit?
Yeah, like on my highest level weeks, I'm training 20 hours, 18 to 20 hours, and 15 of it, 14 to 15 of it for sure is in that, like, you know, really low zone, like that 145 beats per minute or less.
Yeah, okay.
And then of that, there is then 3 sessions where the training stimulus is really at heart rate, probably under 30 minutes per session, because you're just like there for 5 minutes, you recover for a bit, and you do 6 rounds of it like that, and you're really getting up above 165 for only 3 of the 5 minutes, because it takes a second to get your heart rate back up again. It's not that intense, but you do 2 or 3 of those for sure. And then there's that middle ground where you're kind of floating around occasionally.
Yeah. So talk me. Can you talk me through? I mean, what day are we? I mean, what day is it? It's Thursday there today. But can you talk me through what you've done this week? What your training? If you don't mind, or I don't know how secretive it is, but
no, it's not that secretive. Yeah. I think it's like, you know, I'll admit this is one of these kind of things where I tell these things on podcasts or like interviews or a YouTube video, and I always kind of tell people, I'm like, don't try to do what I do because you haven't done the work for 10 years. Yeah. And then people will do it for like a week, and then they get like plantar fasciitis or blow their back out.
Yeah, this comes everyone. This comes with a "don't try this at home" clause, folks. So I mean, don't forget that it takes time to build up to the sorts of things that Hunter's doing.
Yeah. I mean, you could do it, but your body won't receive it well, and that doesn't mean that it's not good training. Like I could go and do an Ironman week like of training like you did at your peak, and my body wouldn't absorb any of it. It would just fucking hit it like a train, and it would suck. And people don't get that until they've done it enough times that they all of a sudden wake up to it. But this isn't a good week because this is a race week. But so like Monday, for the past 4 weeks, Monday has been 6 to 7 rounds of running 5 minutes at about a 5:25 to a 5:45 pace, and then you get off immediately into a 1 minute station at like 98% of your race pace, so it's like only a couple seconds off, and then you get back on the treadmill. So you're overrunning. So I'm overrunning my amount of distance that I would do in the race just to practice economy and stamina. And then at nighttime, I'll do like, you know, another 45-minute run into a 45-minute bike run. And so like that all adds up to maybe 2.5 hours. Tuesday is like a hour-and-a-half long bike ride, or a 45-minute run into a 45-minute bike into a 45-minute run into a couple like specific stations afterwards for extended periods of time, but not at high heart rate. It's just efficiency, stamina building. And then in the evening, another hour on the bike. Wednesday, I now do minute run, minute station for 8-minute blocks, and I do about 4 to 6 of them, depending on like how intense I want to go. And I go way overweight and way over intensity in the stations.
Yeah.
I'm
Do you over the run? Are you way over on the run, or is that at your race pace?
Yes, I'm at race pace, so now I'm down to like 5:15 miles. But you're only doing 8-minute segments, and then I put, you know, extra 60 kilos on the sled, pushing really hard on the run, I'm pushing really hard on the sled, and I'm like up at that 170 beat per minute thing. So I'm kind of like 5 beats over that kind of like aerobic threshold lane. Yeah. And then next thing you know, little recovery. Thursday is more of a long run right now, 75 minutes. It's nothing crazy. And then a bike in the evening. And then Friday now I'm doing like a 3-minute run into a 1-minute station to a 1-minute run. And now I'm at like a 4:55 mile. So I'm way over on the run, and I'm now about 90% on the station.
Yeah, right.
And what
that's almost like a VO2 max type session now.
But I still I'll still keep my heart rate at 165 to 170 beats per minute. Yeah. Like I don't need to spend the cash going 5 beats higher. And Saturday will be a 3 to 4 hour bike ride.
So you're still getting, that's quite impressive. So you're still getting in some proper long endurance in there as well.
Well, the way that I've always liked it, but the coach that I've been working with now, this guy Jacques Devore, he's a really smart and talented guy. He's always just like, we always just have to keep that like extra aerobic window open so we can just build more stamina and just keep it like tested. In reality, it's like, man, when you can do a 3 to 4 hour bike ride in the mountains here where I'm gaining about 5,000 feet every bike ride, and I often will do it on my mountain bike. Like I like it like that. And I'll be riding my mountain bike alongside of guys on road bikes. And I like the challenge. And then all of a sudden you just think about it. You're like, this is only a 50-minute race. Like this is nothing. Yeah. So, you know,
it definitely makes a difference. I reckon
Yeah. Sorry. What do you need? We have friends here.
That's so good.
Yeah.
I was going to say, but I think the real thing is that with like what hearing your training, like it seems, I would imagine that most high people getting into HYROX probably they think more about the stations and the work and don't focus as much on the aerobic fitness, right? And I think for the sounds of it, you've got the aerobic fitness down so down pat that it makes the big difference, right?
Well, you just have to be efficient, and in reality, like, you're going to notice this a lot, and it bothers me, and I try not to pinpoint anybody because it's probably not the best thing in the world, but if they decide to fight me on it, I'll go to war. There's all these people, there's all these people that will come out and try to sell you, you know, they'll try to sell you a teacup as a boat, you know what I mean, like that. They're like, you only need this. In reality, it's like you're not going anywhere unless you have the right vessel for the job. And in reality, there's not one person in the world at any Olympic standard sport that is not putting in this kind of volume that has some kind of aerobic capacity. No, it's like, you know, why do 1,500-meter runners run 100 miles a week?
Yeah, exactly. So I worked. So my background, I was a exercise physiologist by training, and I was with the New Zealand rowing team for 8 years. So I went to as a physiologist, went to London, went to Rio Olympics. And, you know, we're talking a 6-minute race, right? And, you know, they're training 20 hours a week for 6 minutes of racing. Yeah. You know, and it's like, this is the sort of, it's crazy, really. But yeah, I mean, that's, you want to hear some crazy erg. I've coached a few world records on the ergs. Like,
you're friends with Eric Murray?
Yeah. I'm good.
I interviewed him a while ago. I like him a lot.
So I was talking to Eric this week, actually. Yeah. So he's, I was worked very closely with Eric and Hamish. And when Hamish finished rowing, I coached him in cycling as well. Yeah. So,
those guys are rock stars. Like, I have Eric's name on my board to motivate me when I'm rowing.
He's a man. So listen to this. So I used to do all their erg training. So when Eric broke the 5K world record, I coached him for that. Yeah. And the half marathon world record, I coached him for that. And one of the craziest things I've ever seen, I've seen a lot of crazy sporting events, like feats. In training, he did 4 2Ks with 4 minutes recovery, all in under 6 minutes. Yeah. It's mad. It's crazy. I mean, you know how much that is.
It's insane. My best ever was a 6:07, and that killed me. But you got to understand, like, this is much of what I'm trying to say. When your body has taken on that much volume, it literally disperses intensity like nothing, like water off a duck's back. Like, to him, every single one of those would be like a toddler punching him on the chin. I know this obviously was a lot harder than that, but he's done so much work that the body just becomes so efficient at it. Yeah. So for me, it's like, how can I tell you guys how to get better at HYROX? The ugly answer is give me 18 to 20 hours a week for 12 years of functional fitness. And it's like, you can do it. You can do it.
Exactly. I mean, that's the same with me. I mean, I did Ironman since I was 9. I did triathlon since I was 9. 9 years old, I did my first.
And what'd you do, like a 750?
756, yeah.
Yeah, like, but that's what I'm saying. It's like, I bet you were so economic through the run, the swim, the bike. It just was costing you nothing.
Yeah, well, exactly. That's what it is. I don't always say that. My rule of Ironman, I'm like, everyone said, what do you want to do? I want to get faster. And I'm like, it's not about how fast you go. It's about how easily you do it.
The letter E is what I say. It's efficiency.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I guess that's a great segue into let's talk a little bit about Ironman, because I know that you did Ironman Copenhagen last year in your off season, and I watched your YouTube, and by all accounts you did a PB deadlift and a few beers the night before, apparently. So talk to me a bit about that. What inspired you to have a crack at that? I mean, your time was really good, like 10 hours 30, 3:30 marathon. I mean,
Yeah,
it's pretty impressive.
I think it came out to 10:23 and a 3:24 marathon. Like it's nothing to brag about, but it's something to do. And I'm a big believer in getting out of your lane and focusing on something a little different in your off season so that you can keep your motivation high. Because we've been doing this for such a long time. Like if you asked me to do another HYROX within a month of doing the World Championships, and you even offered me $100,000, there's a hard chance that I'll show up.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Like I just don't want anything to do with it anymore. And
Yeah.
it's very easy for me to just be like, I call a couple of my buddies. I'm like, let's do a fucking Ironman.
Yeah.
Dude, I don't know if you know, but a couple of weeks, only 3 weeks beforehand, I did the Starvation Triathlon, which is Ironman distance. It's the hardest Ironman in the world, mile for mile.
Right. Wow. So I've never even heard of that race. What is it?
Well, you know the Norseman?
Yeah, I know the Norseman.
So it's part of the XTri series. So
Right,
it's not as big as the Norseman because obviously the Norseman has just got like this, it's got this, it's very cool. But the guy who, I'm sure you heard of the Iron Cowboy, it's his race.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I've heard of him. Yeah.
Yeah. So for mile, there's more elevation than the Norseman, and it's actually at altitude.
And you did that like 3 weeks before the Ironman. Holy crap! How long did that take you?
I think 15 hours and 50 minutes.
Jeez, that's a long time on your feet.
That's 10,000 feet on the bike, all at altitude, and I think 7,000 feet on the run.
Yeah. So when you went to Copenhagen, that would have been a walk in the park.
It was, dude. I was not stressed until the last 3 miles on Copenhagen.
Yeah, and that's how you should be. Like I remember when I always say to the Ironman athletes that I coach is like, the last 10K should be hard, and that's it.
Yeah.
That's it. You should be working the last 10K. If you're working hard earlier than that, it's not going to end well for you.
It's also a fueling game. If you can really nail your fueling down for Ironman, it's a lot easier. So I did Ironman Arizona in 2023.
Yeah.
And I didn't fuel well at all for that thing. I just didn't know what I was doing. I wasn't thinking well, and I think I ran like a 10:50. And then, I went and did this starvation one, and it was just so insanely brutal, like soul-sucking, that by the time we had showed up at Copenhagen, we didn't really care. We just wanted to get it done. But my only goal at Copenhagen was just eat well and drink well and just be consistent. And I skyrocketed. It was awesome.
Exactly. So like a bit of my background is like I've done a lot in kind of like fuel utilization and shifting substrate use to having a higher fat metabolism. So I've done a lot of research in that. I've talked about it a lot. So I've always kind of done a lot of like low glycogen training, like low carbohydrate diets to take it to try and really shift your fat metabolism. And the idea is that then you can take less fuel on during racing. And when I raced, I ran a 246 through the marathon, and I had one gel for the marathon.
Well, what was your heart rate?
Yeah, it was 150, 145.
Exactly. But that's it. That's one thing that people don't pay attention. Your heart rate during the marathon is probably so much lower than the average person's that you're probably pulling from fat in that range.
It should all be relative. In fact, the slower you go, the lower your heart rate should be. Really.
Well, that's what I'm trying to say. Yeah. But what's your max heart rate?
180.
Yeah, so if you think about that, dude, you're really at like 70% while doing that. Yeah,
that's where most Ironman athletes should be. That's where you should be when you're doing an Ironman. That's like typically that's around VT1 type, like LT, like aerobic threshold LT1 type of space.
So I'm sure
you would be 150. You should be around the 150 area when you did it. I'm sure that's where you were when you did the marathon.
But here's the thing. My body at that even heart rate, because of the way that I designed my training, especially that time, was probably pulling like 70% carbohydrates at that heart rate. Maybe even higher.
And as it should be with someone of your mass, someone of your background, like, for as I go into HYROX now, I will need to shift that metabolism.
Yeah.
It's all to do with context. My PhD supervisors always taught me, it's context before content, right? It's like, is this diet right for you? It depends what you're trying to achieve. Is this type of training right for you? It depends what you're trying to achieve. But
this has been a big part of my messaging for the past couple of years, and I had to learn a lot about sports nutrition as I changed sport to sport to sport and understand the ingredient values of what I put in my supplements, the timing that I have to eat food, what kind of food that I was eating. and it's changed every single sport. And a lot of, like, you probably understand this, the supplement industry is either for bodybuilders or Ironman athletes. There's almost nothing in between. And the ingredient needs for these athletes are very different. Like, I'm metabolizing things at such a fast rate. Like, if you just look at the minimum effective dose of something, my body will eat through that at a 1.5 times rate of somebody else who's training an entirely different sport.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's been. Go ahead.
I really want to get into your nutrition company as well. I think it's probably fascinating. But before we do go there, I've entered a HYROX in Brisbane.
Let's go, baby.
17th of August. So that'll be my first one, and so I've put on a lot of weight since, like, purposely, like, up to 86 kilos, 87 kilos from when I was racing. So, like, I did a big bulking, did a lot of weight training, but now I'm going to try and start getting back into more of the try and train up for this HYROX. But a real key question is, I think a lot of endurance athletes are getting into the HYROX space. What are some of the main mistakes that, like, these endurance athletes are making when they get into HYROX? Talk to me. Tell me where I shouldn't be fucking up.
Well, I will tell you that your race pace will probably be at your best when you become very efficient is actually like your half marathon pace.
Yeah. Okay.
So if you're going anywhere faster than your half marathon pace in training, or unless, like, you're doing, like, some extreme work like I am, but I'm physically capable enough at this point, then you're making a mistake, because you're never going to get there in racing. So why try to do it in training? Okay. Another thing to tell you is, like, when you're doing stations, you should often do 50% more work than in your station than you'd encounter in your racing, because truly, when your heart rate is up and you've just accumulated all of this effort throughout the race, it's going to feel that much harder.
So it'd be like 150 wall balls and not 100.
100%. And like, people will do
on the rower and stuff like that. And yeah.
I see people all the time. They're like, yeah, man, I did my wall ball sets in 250s the other day. Like, I'm so ready for this race. And then I check their wall ball times at the next race and it's 8 minutes. Yeah. And I was like, how is that physically possible? I'm like, because it probably would take you about 8 minutes to 150 wall balls in training. And that's how it's exactly going to feel when you do racing. Like, I can do 200 wall balls unbroken right now, and I still can't in a race do 100 wall balls unbroken. So, like, that's the kind of thing that people need to encounter is, like, I think they do something in training in this very, very small environment, like a 30-minute workout, and then they show up on race day and then they're so confused why this hurts so bad. It's because it's that cardiac drift. As things get longer and volume accumulates, by the time, like I always tell people, once your body fills up with lactic acid, your body has a little hole at the bottom where it's kind of leaking it out. If you go over the top of this thing, it takes such a long time to come back down to a state of just, like, equilibrium again. Yeah. That you'll almost never recover.
I mean, to me, the way I would think about it is that, lactate clearance, you would almost want it to be clearing lactate as best you can during the running periods, right? And because it'd be quite hard to, some of the stations by default, just from the sheer physicality of it, it'll be hard to clear anything in terms of a lactate and recover in that particular instance. You
never will.
I would assume.
Well, you also have to understand, so when you're doing the sled push, all the blood is going to push down to your legs, and it just sits there, and almost like if someone puts a rubber band on the top of your thigh, it does not come out for a while.
Like
just
an
for
occlusion.
It doesn't come out for a while. It's, when you do the burpee broad jump, it's just the whole body just goes into a state of just complete lactate, like on fireness, and it doesn't come down for a while. And that's why I always tell people, do more in training so that you can just feel like absolute shit, so that you're not surprised when you get there in the race. And like, I would just tell you right now, like, an easy thing for an amateur to do is do the first 4 stations of the race, like, in a row, and race that and see where you're at, and then add about 10 to 20% time on top of that, and that's what you're going to encounter in your race.
Right. Okay, that's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think body weight? Like, I guess a lot of endurance athletes, they probably come at it with a little bit being a bit too light as well. I mean, surely having some weight and size has got to be more beneficial. I mean.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you got to figure, if you just take my body and grab onto the cords of the ski erg, and I jump up in the air and come down, I will generate so many more watts than you will just based off of my weight. And that's the same thing for the rower, the skier, all that kind of stuff. Where you're going to get an easier time than me, obviously, is the run, the burpees, the lunges, the wall balls. Like being lighter in those moments just make it you more efficient. But in reality, like I think the most ideal body for a male is 70 to 85 kilos.
70 to 80, as light as 70, surely not. Really?
Well, I mean, here's the thing, dude. Nobody wants to admit this. HYROX just made a partnership with a company called Center, which great company. I'm not saying anything bad about them.
Isn't that Chris Hemsworth's company?
Yeah. And they changed the sleds, and the sleds have become so much easier because of the surface space. The weight's the same, but the surface space of the actual sled creates so much less friction that people's times have dropped by like 45 seconds on both sleds.
Right.
And when I first got started, I just left the CrossFit Games, and I was a fucking brick shithouse. And it took me nearly 4 minutes to push the sled and pull the sled. Now I will do both of them under 2 minutes. It's like, I'm just going to be honest with you, I'm not that much stronger. I'm not. Like, it's just that the equipment's changed. So you're going to see actually, and I'm hopefully going to have a conversation. I think that we should try to have this kind of global vote, hopefully, to add weight back to the sled, because the sport's changed so much since this partnership came around.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, it's totally going to change the sport, because now you're going to see athletes that typically would never have qualified for the Elite 15 that are going to like just make their way in very easily.
What do you have to do to qualify for the Elite 15? Is it like a time, is it, that you have to do or do you have to like post one of the fastest times in the world or something? It's a
time to get to qualify for a major. So you have to qualify your time at any professional race in a professional wave. And then you go to a major, which is there's 5 locations around the world. If your time is one of the best 15 times in the world, you qualify for a major. And then of every major, if you're top 3 or there's a drift down, if those people have already qualified, then you qualify for worlds. So it's like not that complicated, but you probably need a piece of paper.
Yeah. And when you look online, this is the question I also had, is that the HYROX, you have all the age group times, like, the 30 to 35 and professionals. Are those times done with elite weights, or are they done with is it 20 kg sandbag or is it 30 kg sandbag? Do you know?
I don't pay attention to that, to be honest.
Yeah, I didn't think you would. I was thinking, I didn't think you would. Why would you? I mean, one thing's for sure, I can tell you that 20 kg sandbags is a lot easier than 30 kg sandbags.
Yeah. And dude, that's what I'm trying to say. Like, just that little shift on the sleds makes such a humongous difference. Like, if you had come and competed in the HYROX in 2019 to 2021, you would be mind blown by how hard it was.
Yeah, right. Yeah. But I think like 70 kgs is still, that's pretty light to it. I mean, I could imagine like the erg times and the lunges and stuff would be. Yeah,
they'll make up for it on the running.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Yeah. But yeah, what I also wanted to chat with you about is we talked about nutrition already, is your sports nutrition company and how that came about. So Builder Sports.
Yeah. My motto is building better athletes.
Yeah. Okay. And that's where it came. That's where the name came from, obviously. But did you feel that there was a real gap in the market for something that was more specific between the endurance and the bodybuilding space, I guess?
Yeah. I mean, dude, you'd be surprised, like the average carb powder or electrolyte blend drink, like, here's the thing. I'm not going to bash this company, but one of the most major companies in the world right now has an electrolyte drink, and it's just electrolytes. And people think that that's what's going to get them to the finish line faster, where in reality, there's so many other compounds that need to go into a drink that are actually going to affect your energy from start to finish. Like, sure, it will replenish those few ingredients that are on the panel, but is it really going to enhance your athletic endeavor? No. And what I was noticing is, you've got bodybuilders that are going into the gym for 60 minutes and pumping their weights 5 to 15 reps and then resting for a minute or two and out of the gym in 90 minutes. Their heart rate never gets over like 135 to 140 beats per minute. Their pre-workouts are stimulants that are just like these crank-up supplements so you can just fucking get so jacked up and everything. Yeah. If you took that supplement and tried to go run a HYROX, your heart rate would be so blown out of proportion that you'd lose your mind. And what these companies like, and I made that mistake many times. I went to professional endurance events trying to take like Jack 3D type stuff, thinking that it was going to help, and I blew my fucking head off. And there's not a lot of information behind that. So like my supplement, we call it like flow state. It's just a high dose of beta alanine and a moderately high dose of caffeine, where you're kind of in that flow state. It's not going to, you up. If you want to go
what's the milligrams of caffeine in it?
200. But like,
that's still a good hit.
It is a good hit. Don't get me wrong. But if, there's what's called lab science and field science, and I've literally been with all these athletes around the world, high level athletes, and the average dose that I was noticing was 600 milligrams, at 400 to 600 milligrams that these guys were taking before they'd go out for these events. And you wouldn't want to take that before the start of an Ironman. You'd want to take it before the start of like a fucking balls to the wall, hard ass functional fitness workout that's going to take you 60 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, I'd do 160 before an Ironman, So,
but that's what I'm saying. You're out there for 7 hours. There's no point in throwing you up into the sky high and then kind of letting you drift down like that. But
so there is some great research in like looking at caffeine in milligrams per kilogram body weight, and it seems to almost be that the ergogenic effect, the shorter the event, the bigger the dose. So, if you go like rowing, you'll be talking like 3 to 4 milligrams per kilogram body weight before the start, which is a lot of caffeine. But as the event got longer and longer, even I work in women's kayak, which is like 500 meters, 200 meters, like 50 seconds.
Blast yourself.
Yeah, the shorter the distance, the more you probably need to go to get that bigger effect. But yeah, it's obviously like when there's a degree of hand-eye coordination as well. You don't want to be too crazy with it either, right?
But we're not that hand-eye coordination based, and I'd say paddling is even more, because I've been getting into paddling. I tried to qualify for the Olympics in canoe, and the intricacies of just getting your paddle in the water just perfectly does matter. And if you're too jacked up, you'll fucking overshoot it.
Yeah, right. Okay. Yeah, so I still work with the women's kayak program here in New Zealand with, I don't know if you heard of Lisa Carrington. She's like most decorated New Zealand Olympian, like 5-time Olympic gold medalist she's a beast. You should look her up. She's so strong. She's like, she's just under 60 kilos, bench presses nearly 105 kilos.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's insane, dude.
Yeah. She's really good, really strong. Crazy.
I'm trying to actually qualify for the Olympics in 2028 in paddling. That's like my swan song.
Right. Okay. Mate, well, I know. So I'm really good friends with the women's kayak coach is a guy called Gordon Walker. So in New Zealand we have like the Halberg coach of the Halberg Awards, which is like sports awards, national sports awards sorts of thing, and he's the Halberg coach of the decade. So if you need a hookup, I'm sure you want to have a chat with him.
Trust me, dude. I'll fly down. I know it's a long ways away. I went to New Zealand once, but I would fly down.
It's super close. California to New Zealand.
16 hours.
Yeah, but it's one flight straight from San Fran over here, and you arrive pretty much at the same time, but just a day later.
Yeah.
No jet lag.
Listen, I got no reason to complain. Yeah, but as far as this, like, I'll give you another example. For our Strength X2 supplement, so many people are taking creatine. There's not many ways to skin the cat on that. When I was training to set the Murph World record, I was trying to find a way to get my blood flow as efficient as possible, as high as possible, because I was getting kind of like this mega pump that I could not get out of these muscle groups, my triceps, my pecs, my quads. So I started increasing like all of these blood flow supplements, and I'd mess around with all different kind of categories, and I came to citrulline, and I started high dosing citrulline, and I started feeling so much better. Like I just could, for some reason, go and do it. And like, I started looking at it and I was like, what's the effective dose on this? And I was starting to see 6,000 to 10,000 milligrams for people that were really trying to have high repetition workouts. And you look at all these supplements and they're like 500 milligrams to 1,500 milligrams of citrulline. Wow. And I was recognizing that so many of these brands that I was like excited about taking were just giving you, like, as I said, the teacup. They're giving you something.
You do use the citrulline before you did a HYROX? I mean, that seems like,
constantly.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like a no-brainer of an ergogenic for that.
But dude, you'd be so surprised. Like our product's called Strength X2, and people are like, "What does it do? Like, what does that mean? And I was like, well, just think about it. It's just a multiplier of strength. It's just like, think about the ability of doubling your strength in this capacity. And I try to explain it to people. They're like, that I've never heard of this citrulline ingredient. It's weirding me out. I'd rather just take creatine. And I was like, well, creatine is good. Don't get me wrong. But creatine is a strength performance supplement, and it's very, it's short. You can use it in training. It will have some effects when you're doing high intensity output in this race, but you really want to look at more so is the blood flow aspect, which you're cranking through the roof.
Are you dosing with that? I mean, with creatine, right? Pretty much you're loading it. You take it every day. Are you like citrulline and creatine? Are you putting it in a shake in the day and having? Are you?
I have 1 scoop of Strength X2 before my workout with carbohydrates in a drink with my beta alanine. If I've already had coffee, I won't take my pre-workout on top of coffee, and I'll just pop pills instead because I don't want to way overshoot myself. Usually, the blend is 20 to 50 grams of carbohydrates in a 24-ounce bottle, with Strength X2, which is 5,000 milligrams of creatine, 5,000 milligrams of citrulline, 3,200 to 6,400 milligrams of beta alanine, and I go start my workout. Every single hour, I will then also have another 25 to 50 grams of carbs with a half scoop of Strength X2 and another 2 to 4 milligrams of beta alanine.
Yeah, okay. Every half an hour?
Every hour.
Every hour, right. Okay. I mean, that's... Yeah, I'll have to look it up. I might have to get myself involved before I do these HYROX with some extra citrulline.
You'd be surprised, man.
About it, to be honest, it makes perfect sense though.
When you're at that level, so like when we were talking about that 150 beats per minute when you're doing the race, the way that your body is metabolizing things in that space, and then all of a sudden you shift to another gear, it just, if you think about it, when I'm doing a VO2 max effort for an hour, I'm burning 1,800 calories. And if I drop it down 30 beats per minute, I'm burning only 1,300 calories. That extra 25% of just like chewing things up, all of those ingredients make a difference if you're trying to set world records like myself. Because 1% is 32 seconds in my race.
Yeah, I mean, the higher up you go on the little pointy curve of competition, the marginal gains, right? The smaller these differences make. And then also you've also got you've got a training platform, right? Is it HYROX?
Hunter's Academy of Strength.
Okay, now that makes sense.
There you go, dude. There you go.
Yeah, right. And talk to me a bit about that. Is that like an online community, or is it like?
Yeah, I wanted to make sure that it wasn't just like a regular training company. I wanted it to be an academy. So like we have our normal thing that you can sign up for. You can buy PDFs, but like this summer we have what's called like the total body transformation, where it's like, hey guys, off season's actually extremely important. It's the time where you get to work on all the shit that you fucked up last season, and you get to go into next season feeling like a better person. So we'll educate people for 8 weeks in a very specific course with a bunch of Zoom calls. You get all these PDFs. You pick one of 3 strength programs that you're going to do, and we teach you how to fuel every single workout, how to...
So is it not like HYROX specific?
It is very HYROX specific because I'm a HYROX athlete, but in reality... if you came in as an Ironman background and decided to do our strength training program, like you'd still learn a ton because, you know, most people are in the gym and I tell them, I'm like, hey, listen, in this kind of program, you actually want to focus on tempo-based lifting. On this one, you want to focus on power-based lifting. On this one, you want to focus on volume-based lifting. And you'll get 3 different kinds of results based on the way that you actually approach the gym. And if you want to go and tackle this workout properly, you're going to want, and you want to gain muscle, we're going to add these kind of fuels at this kind of time, the nutrients, the hydration, everything. Because I'm always amazed when I sit down with people and they just like have been working out countless hours, but they have no clue what the hell they're doing. They don't know what to eat. They don't know what to like, how to recover. They're like, why do my knees hurt all the time? Yeah. And why
and there's so much conflicting information as well. Like, you know, there's no, I mean, within the triathlon space and with my company, EndureIQ, like my big thing is always try and give the correct information and make the complex into the simple. And I think that's what, you know, you need to do, right, with people who are getting into things, right, in this space. It's really important.
I have 8 certifications, and I've read hundreds of strength and conditioning books. And in reality, like, it does come back to some, like, critical principles. I think as sports get more extreme, like, you have to have some kind of specific understanding. HYROX is not that extreme, but I've seen so many people go from being CrossFit coaches into HYROX coaches because CrossFit's dying and HYROX is on its way up, that these people who knew how to program for Fran 21-15-9 think that they can now all of a sudden program for HYROX, and their understanding of just exercise science, it's so skewed towards CrossFit that they have a very, very screwed up understanding of how to get ready for a HYROX.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to pretend like you're never going to get it, but the HYROX world is still very, very immature in its education and platform as far as delivering for clients that are coming in, and it's a floodgate, dude. I mean, a couple of years ago, I would show up at events and there'd be less than 1,000 people, and now we'll go into rooms with 20,000 people there.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I mean, I think like it's a slippery slope, especially when you consider, like, I do feel like the CrossFit area, I don't know. I feel like they would focus mostly on the strength stuff as well, and they wouldn't have much idea about, when you talk about strength and conditioning, there'd be the strength and not much conditioning.
Yeah.
Like that's where they would really shine, so to speak. But I don't think that's where you'd want to. But I don't think that would be the basket you want to put your eggs in if it was me.
Well, dude, I used to work with Charles Poliquin. I don't know if you ever heard of him and his work, but Charles Poliquin was the most decorated strength and conditioning coach for all Olympians in history. He had the most medals of anybody underneath him. And that guy basically cut my time in the gym down to 1 day a week with 3 lifts.
Yeah, wow.
And I was just like amazed. And he was like, dude, you're doing so much. You're never going to absorb the work that you're doing. And you'd be so surprised. And I'm just like, I'm staying so strong. But then all of a sudden, my 5K time is dropping, but I'm still benching like in the hundreds of kilos. And all of a sudden you're just like, how could this be? And you just think you have to do more to get better. And people just don't get it. Your body can't absorb that kind of work.
Yeah. So do you ever go to the gym now? I mean, it doesn't sound like you go to the gym and like you do like reps of bench press or reps of squats. Do you ever?
No, I do 1 day a week. 1 day a week, really. And maybe 2 days.
You'll do like some max strength, like an actual gym session that's not really a circuit. You just go into the gym and lift some weights.
Very low. So like, I'm a really big believer that you should have some key lifts throughout the entire season. And one of the easiest ways to find out if you're overtraining is if you drop more than 10% from your max.
Yeah. Man.
So let's just say like in the off season, I build up to 315 for 5 reps on a back squat. And it's not like break your back intensity, but it's strong, controlled, really heavy lifts. I just the other day came into the gym and I did 3 of them. And I was like, okay, I'm not that far off. Like, I'm not fucking myself up. I still have a ton of strength. If I push myself to my limits, could I get those extra 2 reps? For sure. But from when I was in my strength cycle compared to when I'm in my cardio cycle, I'm only a couple reps off. And that's enough by me because my job isn't to be a power lifter, but I do use powerlifting to get better at my job.
Yeah, understood. No, really good. I mean, I am conscious of time. If people are watching, obviously people will be super fascinated. I'm sure everyone's going to be taking a load of notes and reading and going back on this. But to find out more about you, Hunter, to follow your journey, what's the best places to find you online? You're pretty active on the Instagram.
Yeah, dude. Like I've got a couple businesses, and I recognize that one of the coolest ways to not only like spread knowledge but also like encourage the next generation is content these days. It's what got me motivated to get into sport. I watched the greats from the past and I was like, I remember watching Iron War and I was like, I want to be those guys. So
yeah.
I'm really dedicated to making content, and our YouTube channel, like I pretty much show every aspect of my training and my eating and everything like that. So YouTube is like the long form fun stuff. And as far as like just like some motivational BS, Instagram is just pumped full of it, so that's fun. But if you type in Hunter McIntyre,
YouTube really good, and it's very entertaining because you're a great personality as well. Like, it's very good. I mean, I don't really watch. I've watched. I kind of watch some of the Ironman ones, and I get pretty sick of them because the personality is not there. But you do a really good job. It's
dude,
pretty good.
We got blitzed drunk the day before our Ironman. It was crazy. It wasn't planned at all. Like, I didn't show up and be like, let's wreck this thing. But it was pride, and we just went out, and all of a sudden it just became a magic carpet. Like, we just could not stop moving, and we brought our cameras into the bar and everything. And I'm that kind of person. Like, I would rather live life than all of a sudden just always just be like holding back. Hopefully something's going to work out for me if I'm just more restricted. But I save my restrictions to this time of year where I focus on the championship. But
you definitely, I really appreciate it, because you definitely seem to live life to its fullest, and I think it's very refreshing to watch. You know, it's awesome. It's really cool.
Yeah, man. Don't allow. I'm a big believer in this. Don't lose who you are to become what you want to be, because I've done that before. Where I've quit being Hunter to be something that I thought I wanted to be, like the CEO of these companies. Then all of a sudden you get all rip shit pissed and angry all the time. You're like, I don't want to be that person. I'm going to go back to being Hunter and allow this to grow organically. So that would be my advice to anybody getting into these sports. Don't lose yourself in the pursuit of becoming something that's potentially cooler than what you are now.
Yeah, it's amazing. Well, so you're racing this weekend?
Yeah, I'm going for the world record this weekend.
So can we watch that on? I mean, this will be coming out after the fact, but
my team will have a whole YouTube episode set up for it, so you guys will get to see, you know, the best that we can film, because they don't always give us absolute access. But that will be up there. World Championships are June 7th. That will all be live streamed professionally, so that will be really high quality. But
where are the World Championships held?
Nice, France.
Far out. I'm almost going to be in Nice at that time. I'm in Nice close to then.
Well, dude, if you show up, dude, it will be a show. I mean, the sport's pretty extreme now. It's a really cool experience.
Yeah, well, yeah. Like I said, my first one I've entered in Brisbane, so like we'll see how that goes. Eh?
Yeah, the race doesn't start until after the sleds. That would be another piece of advice for you. So enjoy yourself.
Yeah, cool, man. Well, no, thanks for taking the time, and we'll keep in touch.
Appreciate it, brother.